My name's Oliver Jeffers and I made Lost and Found, the picture book. I make various types of art. I'm very interested in how words and pictures go together, which led me into making picture books in the first place. Lost and Found is about friendship. It's about a boy and a penguin. The boy discovers a penguin on his door, and assuming that the penguin is lost, he tries to help him find his way home. They travel to the South Pole, only for the boy to realise that the penguin wasn't lost at all, but was just lonely. Some years back, there was a school trip, went to Belfast Zoo, and this little boy broke away from the group and managed to climb into the penguin enclosure and kidnapped a baby penguin. And it wasn't until he got home and was in the bath, or in the bathroom, locked in the bathroom with a baby penguin in the bath, that his parents discovered it, and they had to call the man from the zoo who came out the next day. So they kept the penguin in the bathtub overnight, and so everybody in Belfast was talking about this incredible story, and that led to just drawings in my sketchbook about this interaction between them, which I just thought was fascinating, and that's the bathtub, and the two of them playing in the bathtub sort of became the rowboat, and that's where it all started.
Lost and Found is a fantastic story. It's a deceptively simple story. It's I knew it before any discussions had taken place about a film. I knew it as a story I read my kids, first my daughter, then my son, and it was Oliver's books are firm favourites at home. And what I always liked was, with Oliver's stories, there's plenty of room to extrapolate and go off on tangents as you're reading it. And so when this project popped up, and it really did pop up out of the blue, it was a 30-second decision as to whether to say yes or no. In my head, I knew roughly that I did want to see it come to life, but I had a very specific idea of how I wanted that to happen. And then when Contender approached me to say we're interested in turning Lost and Found into animation, my immediate reaction was thanks, but no thanks, not interested. I want to expand this. And then when Contender said, well, actually that's exactly what we want to do, then it became a very interesting conversation, and I was told that Contender didn't have a studio lined up and that I had a choice in that, and so immediately I thought of Studio AKA. It was, in my opinion, they're the finest in the business at what they do.
What was new for us with working on Lost and Found was it was an opportunity for us to work first-hand with Oliver, and also a challenge for us to be able to bring to life something that was his baby. And it was very important for us that whatever we did was something he was going to be very pleased with as a finished result. And it was important for us to involve him at every stage of the production.
The initial idea was that we would just take the book, the style of the book, and make a film of that. But then, of course, we realised that it's a half-hour adaptation. Basically, the book is very small, and you can read in 5 minutes. And so immediately there was the issue of, well, how do we keep the same story and stretch it without it being obviously stretched? Oliver, myself, and Oliver's brother, Rory Jeffers, sat around and for an afternoon and just talked through various ideas about what we should do. Then, basically, I went away, and Oliver went away, and we both wrote down our memories of that meeting and a sort of rough treatment. I then took all of that material and put I think a first draft out. So it was a lot of writing and then condensing that into a treatment. As soon as we had a treatment, we started drawing that treatment. We started literally every single visual idea that we could think of that was in those words, we put out on paper, and we did a storyboard, a huge storyboard, in fact, over a period of about 4 weeks. Armandine, the production designer, sort of lost the use of her fingers in getting that done on time.
But tiny images, so I had to draw tiny bits very quickly, and so I had quite a pain in my arm. But yeah, maybe 1,000 images for the storyboards, and after for the design I didn't have the pleasure to count.
But all this distraction was getting them nowhere, and so the boy decided that some proper thinking was called for.
The big element that we introduced to explain the realization that the penguin wasn't lost but just lonely was the photograph, which was a little moment early on in the film where the penguin's messing around. The boy is irritated, reaches into the photo booth to grab hold of the penguin and get him out of there, and come on, I'm trying to get you home. It's sort of very quickly passed by in the movie. You don't really notice it, but you remember it later on when you finally get to see what it was that the penguin seemed to care about so much in that suitcase. And the photograph, which was actually the boy just grabbing the penguin, to the penguin looks like a hug. And that's the moment, that's the visual moment which tells us that the boy finally gets the penguin just was looking for a friend. One of the key decisions that we made earlier on was also to take the film from 2D, from drawings, into 3D, into a dimensional world. And we treated it very much as you might do it if you were putting it on stage or making, I don't know, a live action film of it.
The first thing that we needed to do was see what the boy looked like when he moved, and so it was early tests done, and immediately we were presented with a problem, which was he couldn't move his head, because in the book it's his round head just stuck on a square body, which in 2D form looks great. It's sort of what gives it its style, but suddenly whenever you try to make that move, whenever he needed to turn his head, it looked like he had a broken neck, or it looked like he was Batman, you know, sort of having to look like that, so which just looked awkward. So problem number one was he needed to have a neck.
So Oliver's character in the book is hand-drawn. It's a 2D, very simple line drawing. And in translating that into a 3D character, we had to make a number of changes. We were going for a character which looked a bit like a little toy or wooden puppet character. And part of that required us to be able to find a solution to the mouth. He doesn't really speak. There's no lip sync in the film, but he has to get a lot across in expression on his face and gestures in the hands. So we did what we would always do with this kind of thing, which was try and work out all sorts of faces to suit different moods and expressions. Resentful, curious, happy, sad, scared, and so on and so forth. If you look here, look at the way that the eyes, they kind of have all these different movements possible to them, but they remain very integral to the shape. And the mouth, especially here, is capable of all sorts of very, very extreme moves without the shape of the head ever really, really changing. But most people, when they see the final character, would still recognize him. And I think that a lot of that, of course, is down to the fact that the jumper and the hat are such obvious signature devices. The penguin was a completely different story. Our penguin is a very, very simple figure indeed, very, very blank. One of the things I liked about the character in the book is he just does nothing for so long. I mean, the joke was always on this film that our penguin doesn't sing, he doesn't dance, he doesn't surf, he doesn't do anything. We had this idea of him as a kind of slightly mournful Buster Keaton type of character, who would just use the minimum of gesture and the minimum of performance. As it went on, we found there was a need for certain kinds of expression. Here, for example, with tiny little eyes and a very little beak, we ran through all the different extremes we could with the face. As it turned out, it was probably more important what his flippers were doing or what his body posture was doing in order to get across exactly how he was feeling at the time. The penguin's walk was also crucially important. Here you see some very, very early tests trying to find the right speed for the character to walk. That was because, a lot of the film, the boy and the penguin are walking side by side, and in fact they don't find it that easy to walk together in sync. That led on to something else which was quite nice, which was because they could never really walk side by side, the penguin was always playing catch-up, which is perfect for the relationship between the boy, the penguin who wants to keep up with the boy, wants to be his friend, and the boy who's always striding on ahead.